We're delighted to have partnered with NordVPN again for this season. We partnered with them last year, and they are, of course, a supporter of Rangers FC as an official sponsor there. And best of all, we can give you an exclusive NordVPN deal. If you go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand, you will get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and one additional month for free. Completely risk-free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee with Nord. And look, I use this product. I would highly recommend it. I used to work in web, so I know how easy it is to steal people's data, especially if you're using a Wi-Fi system that is a shared one, or you're using 4 or 5G, then your details can be out there. With NordVPN, they're absolutely not. And there are other advantages to it as well. You can watch sporting events that maybe aren't being shown in your region. You can purchase flights from different virtual locations, and they do make your flights cheaper. This is very, very useful. What a price is in the UK isn't the same as what a price is in America or a price is on the continent. NordVPN can save you money. You can buy purchasing subscriptions from other countries at a cheaper price, and you protect your data while travelling and using public Wi-Fi. I keep coming back to that. Anyone who's at the hassle of a cancelled card will know what I'm talking about. So all you need to do is go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand, and you'll get a huge discount off your plan and 1 month additional free, completely risk-free. I urge you to do it. Hello everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar, and as always, I am your host, and I'm joined this week on the show by my good friend, the owner-operator of Four Lads Had a Dream. It's Stevie Clifford. Good afternoon, Stevie.
Hello everyone. Hi David, thanks for having us on the show.
So, yesterday, we thought we'd have a nice wee quiet cup tie at home, lower division side, pretty straightforward, maybe see a few players that we hadn't seen and looking forward to it. And, well, it turned out to be the exact opposite of that. Rangers appalling in the first half, going in 1-0 down. In the second half, back in, it looked as though we were going to go on and win it. One of the most bizarre incidents that I've seen in all my time going to Ibrox, and a massive talking point after it. Now, first things first, Stevie, let's get the caveat out the way of it's the cup, it's always important to get through, yada, yada, yada. But in all the goal and allowed goal discussion, and we will get to that, obviously, let's not overlook that, especially that first half, that was a shambles of a performance from Rangers.
Yeah, I really blame myself because on the way there to the game, David, we said how lovely it had been this week that we had had some time off, no midweek game, and social media had been quiet, so we had a chance just to chill out and enjoy some downtime. And then, obviously, Rangers said, hold my beer, we'll sort that for you. So, yeah, didn't expect it to go the way it did yesterday, but you're right about the first half. The first half was really disjointed. I thought they started okay, and then very quickly they got, how's the best way to describe this? They got kind of mudded down. They got bogged down, and they didn't find space. They weren't getting any width, and there was no pace in the attack, which made it all very predictable. It was easy for Thistle to defend. And then Thistle started to get more into it. They started to create their own wee chances, and a couple of fantastic saves from Alan McGregor kept it at 0-0. And I certainly thought maybe that, that might waken them up. And then you get the VAR decision, which, as soon as he goes to the monitor, you're pretty much resigned to the fact that they're getting it. And then it's at half time, you're concerned about where we were and what was going on. But I was pleased. We spoke yesterday on the pre-match show. I was pretty pleased about who we were going to see. Cantwell on the left, and we're going to see a bit of Hadji and stuff, but it just didn't work. They were all very similar. Malik Tillman was quiet because I think that these guys all play. They're all very similar, and there's no legs in there, David. There's no pace. There's no running beyond or running off them. So I even think just one change in that three might have really helped them. But it's no criticism of Michael Beale because I can't criticise him when I said I was looking forward to seeing the teams or the players that he'd picked in the team. So it just didn't work. and it wasn't the right blend, and it really was bleak. I don't think we tasted the goalkeeper once in the first half.
We
So
didn't have a shot on
um,
target.
so there you go. Then that's kind of where we were. A couple of crosses from Borna and stuff, but aside of that, we needed a lot more. Antonio Cholak was very isolated. So we had to make changes. I think we were saying at half time there could easily be 3 or 4 changes here, and we wouldn't have been surprised. But he did make the ones that made the difference. That's for sure. And you seen it instantly with the movement and things. So, but as for a first half, probably as poor as it's been under Michael Beale.
I think yesterday, I've got to say that I thought the attitude was wrong in the first half. The team played with a sense of it's only Partick Thistle and we're at home and in the cup and we're going to win. They seemed surprised that Partick came and made it a cup tie. And it was a cup tie. And it was a big day for Partick. They had a massive away support. It was a big, big day for them. And they went out and had a right go. And I think that caught our players on the hop, as you say, because if you look at, say, the performance of Kamara compared to what he did at Tynecastle a couple of weeks ago, there was no urgency. It was the kind of the worst version of Glenn Kamara that we see. And obviously he's the first I'm getting to, but he certainly wasn't the only one where he just was slow. He wasn't making the quick moves to intercept the ball. His passing was off. And I think that, as you say, that the three in front, they couldn't get anything going at all. The passing was not good. The movement wasn't good. We weren't stretching Partick in any way. I don't think Tav's playing well. I don't think he's played well all season, in all honesty. And it really was a bit of a mess. Let's start then with the penalty for Partick Thistle, handball given by VAR. Probably no surprise after the last few weeks that has been ramped up in the media. But as our qualified referee, Stevie, or one of them, was it a penalty by the current laws, or do we have a case to be upset about?
Is it a penalty by the current laws? Yes. Do we have a case to be upset? Yes. It's one of those ones, David. Now, bear in mind that we saw it in live time, and then we've then saw it. I think the only version I've saw is on your phone, the clips that the guys had put up on the chat. So I've only seen that. I haven't seen the proper highlights as yet. But unfortunately, when your hand's out like that, then you're asking the question completely. I think we've got a right to say, in normal circumstances, that perhaps that's a difficult one to give. But by the letter of the law, it's you're not going to get away with it these days. So I think Antonio Cholak's very unlucky. But I think we have to admit that his arm is out. It is out in front of him, and when that happens, then but it's very difficult, David, because it's natural movement and stuff. I don't think he's deliberately moved his hand up to get it. I just think he's found himself in that position where that's where his arm naturally is. So very difficult one. But sadly, I've got to say that I think that it is a penalty on this occasion by the letter of the law.
I was very upset about it, and then somebody pointed it to me that we got one against St Johnstone a couple of weeks ago that was quite similar. And I think the handball rule is a mess at the moment. I really do.
I think that's the issue. I think it's the actual law is creating so much controversy rather than what we're seeing the referees do, because I think referees are just now, some of them are a bit confused about what's what, and you see it in England and you see some of the let's look at the
West Ham.
Chelsea West
Chelsea
Ham
one,
one,
yeah.
for example, where we spoke about this, David, yesterday, that the law says that you can use a hand to block your fall, and if the ball hits it, then it's not going to be given against you. But that boy's tipped that wide. We all know that. Everybody knows that, and I think that everybody said it was a penalty kick. But the law that they hide behind or use as their discretion to say it's not a penalty is the one we've just discussed. So it's really difficult, and I think they've overcomplicated it. I think they've made it far too difficult to understand. So unfortunately, we were on the wrong side of it yesterday. But as you say, we have had ones that have went for us in the past as well. So given that, as you pointed out before we'd even started this, the way that the coverages went the last few weeks, it was bound to get one where we're going to have to just give it kind of thing. And I think that's where we were yesterday.
So to, of course, the bizarre incident. First of all, Malik Tillman, who was brilliant in the second half, absolutely sensational. He is on the end of a bad tackle, which the referee missed. He goes down, and he was lucky, by the way, not to be injured. I thought it was a shocker, and I would have wanted VAR to intervene on that one. I thought it was a red card, but because I think the boy stamped him, and I think he knows what he's doing. But they don't. Rangers play the ball out for a throw. Partick Thistle then are going to return the ball to Rangers, but do that thing that teams do. And I think that's an important point to mention. Teams, this is not against the convention of what teams do. That they throw the ball into one of their players, who then hoofs it up to the goalkeeper. They don't give you it back in the spot that you were in. We know that. However, he's fannying about. There's no getting away from it. He miscontrols the ball, and Tillman thinks, well, I don't know why it was their throw anyway. He didn't know what was going on. So he thinks the ball was there to be won, which it is, because the guy is fannying about with the ball, and Tillman isn't aware. He hasn't seen him make the gesture that he's going to return the ball. So he goes in, takes it, runs through. Lovely finish, actually. And cue Bedlam. Bedlam breaks out. Partick Thistle players very upset, understandably. Rangers players weighed in as well. And the referee eventually calms it down. Michael Beale instructs his players to let Partick Thistle score. I don't think the Rangers players are too happy about it. Alan McGregor certainly isn't happy about it. He, in fact, I think for a minute Stevie thinks about, I'm just going to save this. I think he really did. But
It would have been very funny if he just
it would have been
away.
very, very funny indeed had he done that. But he lets them score. Ibrox goes fucking mental. I can't think of another phrase for it, folks. I apologise for the language, but my God. And look, I'm going to be very honest here. So did I. I was raging, absolutely raging that we had allowed them to do that. And couldn't understand why. My first thought was they wouldn't have done it for us. And then we've heard from Michael Beale subsequently. He said the reason that we did it, it was a misunderstanding. Tillman didn't know what was going on. We wanted to, we didn't want it following him around. He actually said, I'll tell you the reason why I did it. I didn't want this following him around and it being the story of the game. He's a brilliant player. He's a very honest player. I wanted it just done, over with, and it now is. And to be honest, I think a couple of days it will be. And it's drawn a mixed reaction from the support. I think it's fair to say. I noticed there was a poll on Follow that was sitting about 60-40 in favour that Beale did the right thing. But that's a sizable chunk of people. There was about 3,500 the last time I checked had voted on it. But it's a sizable chunk of people who don't think it was the right thing. Social media being what it is, you get people who are falling over themselves to defend it and people who are falling over themselves to be angry about it, and never the twain shall meet. Although I think a lot of people have said to me today that they've gone away, thought about it, listened to the manager, calmed down in the emotion of the game, and have come round to the idea that it maybe was the right idea. Now, I know I'm a lot calmer about it, Stevie, because we won, right? I know I'm a lot calmer about it. And had we lost, then I would have felt differently. Had we lost to Partick Thistle at home, though, I would be feeling very different anyway, because it would have been an absolute shocker of a result, a totally unacceptable result. And there's no getting away from it. I mean, it would have been a cataclysmic result. So, yeah, I accept that plays a role in my thinking. What I think about it is there's a few things. Somebody said to me, well, would you have done it against Celtic? And no, I wouldn't have. And if that makes me a hypocrite, fine. But I fucking hate Celtic. So, by fair means or foul, then I that doesn't bother me. But there is a bit of me, and maybe it's 90s Rangers fan. I can hear, the younger listeners going, you're such a da. But I don't think Rangers should need goals like that to beat Partick fucking Thistle at home. No offence to them, but we're bigger than that. We're better than that. So while I really didn't like it at the time, I've probably come round to saying, given where we're sitting on the Monday, it was just about the right decision. But it's a tough one. I mean, as I say, I spent last night. I said to you coming out the game, I don't know where I am on that, and there's still arguments both ways for it. I tend to think that if it had happened in a game that didn't involve Rangers, I would have thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. But if we rewind it, at the time, I had no idea what went on because that tackle, David, that we discussed, and I think it's worth spending a minute on. I actually was just writing down a note of the time to say go and check that later because I thought it was particularly dirty at the time. Now, I can't remember if I mentioned to Martin at the time. I said that's a naughty one. Now they
You
were
did.
putting in a lot of little niggly. There was elbows. There was barges. There was quite they were leaving the foot in quite a few times. Now I noted down, got it in my book, it just said go and check that, go and have a look at that. Now, having looked at it again, David, it's particularly naughty because when he lands his foot, that people are saying it's just how he landed his foot naturally. It's not. If you watch what he does, he actually deviates where he's going to put his foot to make sure he lands it right on Malik Tillman. I think we've got a very strong case to be saying we need to ask why that's not a red card or what was, if he wasn't trying to do that, why did he make that movement? Now I'd ask people just to go and watch it again. It's his left leg. Watch where he's going to land it, and then where he actually.
I think he knows what he's doing.
Oh, of course he does. Of course he does. Now, is that endangering an opponent? Is that serious foul play? You're right on the line there. So I've noted that down. Now, as I'm writing down notes to go and look at that, I've went back, and when I've looked up, Malik Tillman's been clean through. So I missed the throw. I've missed him dallying about. And just to explain to people, when we do reports and when we take notes, David, as you know, and we kind of update things as we go so that it's ready to go out and people can read it, as quickly as possible after. So I've just watched him go clean in. He's rounded the goal, he put it in, and I don't understand the reaction. So it completely took me by surprise. It took Martin to say to me, and I went, what's going on? And I thought, sillily at the time, see, because he rolled his foot over and he's kind of showed the skill to make the goalie fall and then put it in, I thought they were upset at him doing that, as if he had taken the kind of piss, so to speak, out of them. And I didn't realise what had went on at all. So Martin then explained. It became obvious what Michael Beale was saying. And I'm like you at the time, I'm like, I need to go and watch all this again. I didn't want to overreact at the time, but I think it helped the fact that we got to listen to not only Michael Beale, but Ian McCall explain it at the time and then go from there. But I'm like you, very fickle from my own point of view, because we won it in the end, and I'm relaxed and I can say, look, it was the right thing to do, and I'm glad that as a club Michael Beale's leading us that way, and it'll get us a lot of good press. And had it went the other way, people would have went had a field day that Rangers need to cheat to win and blah blah blah. If it was an Old Firm, would I want us giving them anything? No, absolutely not. But that's a different argument. So, excuse me. I think that people, have had a lot to say about this today, and I understand some of it. A lot of people are extremely angry about what happened 10 years ago and think that we should be, we don't give them anything, and no matter who, nobody in Scotland tried to help us, so it's still all out modern warfare, etc., against them, and we should have just done it, scored it, and tough on them. I get it. I'm not sure I entirely agree in this situation, David. Like you said, a home game against Thistle, live on the telly, etc. I just don't think we needed to do that. I think the whole thing is a misunderstanding. A lot of people have said, could the referee have done anything? The referee can't do anything unless he circumvents something and says, it's a foul throw, quietens everybody down, quickly explains what's going on to Malik or whatever, which he could have done, but then essentially he's cheating in a sense because there was nothing wrong with what went on. He has to let it play. It's just unfortunate. I understand what Michael Beale says, understand what Ian McCall says, and that to me is fine. It's not a situation where I know it divides opinion, and I understand it. I think this is the vital thing, David. I think sitting here, we can understand what people are saying, but I just think I'm with you. I just don't think we need to be there. I don't think we need to do that in a game like that, or not do that, because that makes it seem like Malik.
So we deliberately did it, yeah.
No, it's not like, I don't think we need to win off of an accidental situation. Then it's a better way to describe it. So I'm with you on it, and yes, look, I think that if we had been sitting here and it was entirely different that had happened, we might have had a completely different opinion on it. So I get it. Maybe it's just a bit more rationale. I think that sometimes in a position like that, David, I find that listening to the managers straight away, more or less, helps me kind of calm down and see the rationale behind it all. So that it certainly helped me yesterday, and I left. I wasn't too up nor down. I certainly wasn't as angry as some people were on social media and stuff. I thought that
I
some
think a lot of
some
that's
people,
performative now.
yeah,
I really
I
do.
think that
Yeah.
some of the reaction was very much like
Oh,
that.
I mean, like people, he needs sacked for that, and you're like, really? But
The McGregor thing was funny though, because as
oh,
we
that I would have defended to the hilt.
yeah.
That and I accept that I would have been wrong and going against everything I said, and I'm a hypocrite, but I would have pissed myself laughing had Alan McGregor point blank refused to do that. And when he dropped his knees later on, when he came for a ball, I thought that was one of the funny. I love him. I mean, just
Yeah, it was
I know
very,
he's coming to the
very
end of
funny.
his time, but two great saves right enough yesterday. But
We can see what he's doing though, David. I don't know if anybody else would, or maybe on telly or at the game, but we watched. So it kind of went through the players, didn't it? And then it went back to Alan, and you can see him shaking his
he
head.
was shaking his hand. He was like, no
Aye,
effing way, I believe was
yes,
the phrase that was used. But
no,
good professionally backed in. But in terms of the arguments, right, the genuine ones, there are arguments that I disagree with, but I accept, and there are arguments that I just dismiss. And on that, the first one being, I just think Rangers should win at all costs. It was an accident. We didn't mean it. The boy dicked about. It was his fault. It was a legit goal. That's fine. Might not agree with it, but that's not acceptable, but that's an understandable point of view to me. The ones I don't get, and there are two in particular that I can't see. Firstly, the one that it's weak from Michael Beale. It's not weak, it's the opposite of weak. There's 40,000 people in there screaming at him not to do it. He gets booed shitless. He then puts himself in a position where he might still get knocked out the cup by Partick Thistle at home, a disastrous result from which his Rangers managerial career might never recover from. It's the opposite of weak. It's actually saying, this is my principle. I'm going to do this. And again, you can disagree with the principle, but it's more difficult to stick to your principles in adverse situations when it's going to go against you. It's easy to do it when you're 5-0 up. It was more difficult to do it then. And also, he backed his team to go on and get the win. So for me, it's the opposite of weak. It's the opposite of weak management. And that feeds into the second argument, which I've seen, which is, because he wants everybody in Scottish football to like him. What more than Rangers fans? You really genuinely believe that Michael Beale is more interested in people who don't support Rangers liking him than people who support Rangers like him? Because that is so cataclysmically stupid and quite self-evidently not the case. They won't get him the sack. We will. Rangers fans will get Michael Beale the sack. This is his dream job that he's desperate to do well in. Do you really think he sat down and went, right, okay, now I know all the fans here want me to do this, but I want Partick Thistle fans to like me more than I want them to like me, so therefore I'm going to be weak. And it's a nonsense. By all means, say you want Rangers to be a cutthroat. We just do, what we can to win, and we don't care how we get there, so long as we win. I'm a great admirer, as long-term listeners to this show know, of teams like Bayern Munich and Juventus, because, as I say, they've got that brilliant, evil, arrogant quality that they just smash everything from the sides and they don't care. But there's a way of doing that. It's not doing things like that. That's kind of, that sort of pissy, low-class behaviour. With Bayern, it's about we're big and arrogant and we don't care. We don't care what you think about any, and we're going to go and steal all your best players and all that kind of thing. And we just keep buying the best players in the Bundesliga to win titles. That's what Rangers did previously. I just don't really want us doing, I don't want us doing Calciopoli. to win like Juventus did. That's not the model I want us to go down. So that one, and then another argument which I saw posted was, do you think Celtic would have done that? I don't give a fuck if Celtic would have done that. The last thing I ever want Rangers doing is behaving the way that Celtic do. They're the antithesis of everything that I want Rangers to be. So that one didn't work for me. But like I say, it's an emotional thing. And I think that, in general, in what has been a relatively quiet period, I'm more concerned yesterday with the level of performance than I am about Michael Beale's decision, Stevie, to let them score a goal.
Yeah, before we really should talk a wee bit more about decision and selection and things like that. But just a wee point on that. Anybody that thinks that Michael Beale enjoyed making that decision, watch him when Ian McCall goes to shake his hand. Watch his face. Watch how he's feeling. He knows what he's doing. And the other side of it as well, David, is that the man management side of it, people have said that he's thrown Malik Tillman under the bus. It's the complete opposite. It's the biggest kind of protection you possibly could have given a player by doing what he done. He's completely taken him out of the firing line. He's taken him out of the limelight. He's made it about him more than it will ever be about Malik Tillman now. And in that dressing room, he's saying, I will protect you. I will, you boys go to the wall for me and I will protect you every turn. And I can't help but think and hope that sitting in the dressing room, they're like, wait, we've got a manager here who will protect us at all costs, so we're going to run ourselves into the ground. I would really hope that's the kind of turn we get from that yesterday. But moving on, I think you've covered everything. I'm like you. I understand some things that people say, and others I just think noise. And I'm not. And you know me, David. I'm not interested in the slightest what they do or the standards that they held. And I seen the clip today of what they did in the 94th minute at Ibrox last season.
Yeah.
When they didn't give us the ball back and stuff like that. I would want us to do the exact same thing. So I'm not going to be hypocritical there. We don't like them. They don't like us. Let's move on from that.
Yeah.
But on the actual performance, David, there's a lot to discuss. And I think one of the things, and I asked Michael Beale about this afterwards, and the question was, it's not the first time he sat in front of us and said, that's not a good Rangers performance. That's not where I want it to be. We were miles off. Now, he's last week he used the word fussy. He said we were over fussy and we overcomplicated things, etc. This week he used the word lousy. So there's been quite, he's been quite objective in the words he's used, and I think he's right. But there's a discussion to be had whether or not he's been too influential, and he said it himself, which I always find quite interesting. Is he tinkering too much? Is he moving away from his basic kind of principles, David, which I think is affecting things?
Yeah, I mean, I think he said we're not going to make many changes, and understandably, because we've 2 weeks between games, and then he makes 7. And I think we've discussed this before. I think he's too open. I think he needs to just be a bit more controlled in what he says. I mean, it's great for the likes of us because we've loads to talk about after a Michael Beale press conference or interview. But I do think he could do for his own good. We just calming it down, being a bit more boring, for want of a better term. I think there's a balance between him and where his style and say Gio's, which just completely shut down all discussion. I think that there's a balance to be reached. Gerrard was very good, I thought, at making a point in a kind of concise and clipped and straightforward fashion. Whereas I think Beale is just much more open, but that's who he is, and that's another side of it. This Rangers team, this Rangers squad coasts. It coasts, and it does it during games. And it does it even in matches that they're superior in. And they lack, for me, that ability to know when to do it. I don't think it's deliberate, and that's why it's probably more of a concern, because I don't think they say when we're a goal up, right, let's just stop and let them back into the game. I don't think that's it. But they have a natural inclination to coast when they get into that. Now, that's happened under 3 managers though, Stevie. So at some point you begin to think, well, it's the players rather than the bosses, because we've had 3 quite different bosses in their personalities, and this happens. The other thing that kind of frustrated me yesterday was, as I say, I don't think they approached that like a cup tie. And if you're going to make a lot of changes, and send the message that this is a team we should be beating. There's nothing wrong with that, but then the application has to be there, and it wasn't there in the first half. And I asked Tav afterwards, when he came in for the press conference, do you think that sometimes this team relies too much on being reactive? And by that is it sometimes seems to take something happening bad in a game to get them moving, to get them going. Yesterday it was, Christ, we were 1-0 down at home to Partick Thistle at half time. And as you say, they got back into it, missed a penalty that, should have been it, and then the game put to bed afterwards, but Tavs missed it. And I think it's that reactive thing that they have in them sometimes. And they need to apply them, or be able to apply themselves over 90 minutes. I think yesterday a big part of that was no Goldson. I think he is absolutely the on-field leader of the side. I think he is the one that will go around and shout and talk about standards. And it's actually quite interesting because it coincides with something I watched at the weekend in the Chelsea West Ham game on BT, when Joe Cole and Rio Ferdinand were bemoaning the lack of talkers in football these days, and saying, when we were growing up, you were encouraged, you were told, I want to hear you by coaches. You need to be shouting, right? If you see a teammate that's dropped 10%, you get over and you get in his face and you get him told, you pick that back up, right? This isn't acceptable. You don't need to be Roy Keane, but, just like, and the Rangers teams, we remember the great ones, they had Ian Ferguson, Richard Gough was the captain, but they had Ian Ferguson, Stuart McCall, John Brown, Ali McCoys, Mark Haitley, Andy Gorham, guys that wouldn't be slow to chin you and say, you've dropped, get us back up. And maybe it is a generational thing, but for me, the only one who does it at Rangers, you've got, Tav leads in a different way. He's more of your kind of, I think, example, and he plays a very big part in the dressing room. But on the field, I worry when Goldson isn't there, because he's the one that goes around and, for want of a better word, takes people's face off. Alan McGregor as well. Without Goldson there, and there's only so much a goalkeeper can do, and that's why I don't like a goalkeeper as a captain. But for me, the on-field leader of that Rangers team is Connor Goldson, and I think you see, even in a game like that yesterday, where it shouldn't have been an issue, that it was.
We spoke a lot about it. I said 2 or 3 times in that second half, I don't feel like I'm in control. I didn't feel comfortable, David. You can watch games sometimes where it's maybe 2-1 or 1-0 or whatever, and you're still relatively comfortable, although you might not want to say it out loud because it's the old, I don't want to jinx this. Yesterday I felt really on edge. I didn't feel comfortable. And you're right about Connor Goals, and we've had the benefit of being in an empty stadium, and we've seen that side of it, you much more than me. But he is a fantastic leader in that sense. He's certainly a big talker. And I also think, to a lesser extent, and this is going to sound maybe a wee bit silly to people, I think Ryan Jack's like that in the midfield. Now, I know Ryan Jack can have games where he's maybe not as dominant as he always is, but I thought we missed his control yesterday. I understand why Glenn Kamara played, but I can't see Raskin and Kamara having that level of control. I would love to see Raskin with Ryan Jack or John Lundstrom, Tynecastle way, where they're dominant and controlling. So I understand why Ryan Jack, they manage the minutes, and Lundstrom obviously carrying the injury. When you talk about coasting, David, which I think is a brilliant analogy of this Rangers team, most teams do it when they're 4-0 up. At half time, it's one of those games where how many times you see a team being 4-0 up at half time, then it finishes.
Yeah, I've seen countless games at Ibrox where Rangers have been 4 up after 50 minutes and that's it done.
Yes.
Thousands.
But unfortunately, this team do it when it's 0-0.
Yes.
And they don't seem to realise. Now, that's something we need to break the mould of. I think that's deep-rooted in terms of individuals and stuff like that. Now, I don't want to single out anybody, but I thought we missed the control at centre-back, and I thought we missed it in the centre of midfield. I thought we were very easy to bypass at times. So that was certainly a big problem. I agree with you on Connor Goldson. I've always been a huge Connor Goldson fan. Always spoke very highly. Our good friend CJ is the exact same. And we've all spoken, David, about what he brings. Now, when he was out, I think people maybe appreciated that more than ever. But I think a game like that yesterday, I think really highlights it again that we can't afford. And I thought Ben Davies, and James Sands were fine. There wasn't much that they did wrong in a sense defensively, because if you look at the goals,
Yeah, just
they
neither
were
are leaders.
they were atrocious for the second. The whole team just
I
you
mean, the
know
boy just walked through.
but aside of that, they can't do anything with the penalty kick, and they were overall fine. But I'm like you, I just we need that sense of leadership, and I think that that was definitely missing yesterday, and it allowed them to float along. I also think, and something I would like to kind of ask you, David, that Michael Beale said a couple of weeks ago in his pre-match press conference before Ross County, if I remember correctly, he said that we've now got the numbers, we can afford to play without Alfredo and Ryan Kent. I
Mm.
just don't think that's true in the slightest. I think that even on an off day, Ryan Kent brings so much to that team, and I think yesterday the big change, and I'll give Kamar Roof credit as well, because his movement is really good, and I would probably go as far as to say, maybe controversially, that Kamar Roof's movement is the best that we have in that number
No,
9 striking
I don't think
position.
that's controversial at all. I think he's a very I mean, I think he's at a high level. That's his biggest strength, I think, is his movement. He's a good finisher too. But no,
You've
I
seen him being
totally agree with
instantly
that.
in,
Yeah, straight
and
away.
then
Yeah.
aye, and Ryan Kent, he pops up and he occupies, and
Kent
that's the thing.
offers drive for a team that
Yes,
often lacks it.
that's it. And we
Kent
we
offers that.
we didn't have that at all in the first half, and that was a big difference between first and second half, and how we created, and how we kind of got back into it. So they were the obvious changes, I think, at half time. But I'm there with you in terms of Michael Beale said afterwards as well, which was interesting. He said that maybe he messed about with the spine of the team. There's maybe 7 or 8 that never ever come out the team, and kind of I think that's where we are. We're certainly at that point now where um, we're recovering from a difficult start to the season and difficult results, where I still think we're too fragile to be making 7 changes, David. And I think
Mm.
that showed that yesterday.
No, I totally agree with that. And on another point there that you mentioned was about the midfield and that drive I spoke about. Early signs, and it is very early, is that Raskin, when he settles, is going to be that type of player. He's already impressed, I think, in his 10-minute appearance as a sub, and then obviously his first start yesterday, because he's shown to me that he's a different type of midfielder to what we have, which is somebody who does have that sort of buzzing energy, but in a forward motion. Just all the time, I want to get forward. And of course, he's there to set up the equaliser with a lovely assist for Antonio Cholak to nod home. And that, I think, if we can get him in, settled, utilised, could be massive, because it is an area that I do feel that we sometimes lack, is somebody that will grab a hold of the ball in midfield and belt forward, streak forward at pace, moving it quickly, looking to release people. And I think that guys like Kent and Roof thrive off that.
Yeah, the word I would use to describe him is something, again, we've mentioned together talking, is progressive. I think that's what he is. He plays with his head up. He's always looking to play it quickly, and he's always looking to set a tempo. Now, we've talked about midfield needing an upgrade for years and years, and we have. I think that's entirely fair. He's completely different, which I think is exciting. If you put him in next to, you know, we've listened to people saying Lundstrom, Jack, Kamara is too similar, and there's not a lot of drive, and there's not a lot of progression when we get to forward areas, and I would agree with that. And I think we've all said that. I think Steven Gerrard, away back in 2019, when it was Davis, Kamara, Jack, was kind of talking about he needed something different in his midfield. And then you look at potential targets the last few years, you understand what they've been looking for. Now, I think we've got a gem in this boy, David. I really do. If you think that he hasn't played in maybe 3-4 months properly,
Mm-hmm.
he's shown real signs. Now, we need to give him time. We absolutely have to give him time. But I think he'll go from strength to strength. I think he's a wee bulldog in that midfield, and I don't mean that in the sense of snarling about. I just
No.
mean he's just a bundle of energy. He's got that drive, he's got that zip. If you can find the right partner with him, and it depends on how he clicks. It might be John Lundstrom, it might be Ryan Jack, it might even be Glenn Kamara the more they play together. I think you'll really thrive with somebody that can anchor the midfield while he buzzes about and plays that progressive passing. So it's really exciting to watch him. I was really pleased with his performance yesterday. He popped up and done really well for the assist for the first one, and I think it was more what excited me, David, was the range of passing. Some of the long balls he played was right on point, and also just the speed and the progressive nature of it. He's always looking to break lines and play those balls forward and zip it about. So I think he'll do really well, and I'm really excited to see more of him.
Yeah, and I mean, I think from my point of view, Kamara was my man of the match against Hearts. I thought he was absolutely superb. That Glenn Kamara's never out your team, but the problem I have right now, I think a lot of the support I speak to do, I can't trust that will show up. I don't know. More often than not, we get that kind of tepid, not really looking fully engaged Glenn Kamara that we got yesterday. And that is a huge source of frustration. To be honest, I really do think that for me, Kamara almost feels like his race is run at Rangers. I think it would suit everybody. I think he needs a new challenge. I think we need a new option in there. It's not about ability in the slightest. He's got the ability. We saw that. He goes to arguably, well, not arguably, literally the second toughest away ground in the country, and he puts in a performance like that. But then we're at home at Partick Thistle, and he puts in one like that. And the latter have been coming up more often than the former for me all season.
Yeah, I think that's bang on. And see the word we used, or you used perfectly earlier on, coasting. That's Glenn Kamara. That's what he does. Sometimes he just turns up like yesterday, and listen, I don't want to be ultra negative about an in particular player or the team, but I think that's correct. I think he coasted yesterday. I think maybe he thought that it was going to be easier than it is. Now he wasn't the only one. You made a point right at the start of this about James Tavernier's performance. I lost count of the amount of times he gave the ball away yesterday, and the amount of times that I felt like I was saying to you guys that he's just having such a bad game, and and we know that he's struggling. I get that, whether it's a hangover from last year, whether it's a fitness thing and stuff, whether he'll naturally fix himself, I'm not sure. But there's a few of them in there that maybe are kind of not consistently hitting the levels that we want them to get. Now, even if you look at the likes of John Lundstrom at Tynecastle, he was incredibly good. That was going back to his best period. We've not seen that enough. Glenn Kamara, to me, I think the same as you. I think it almost seems inevitable that he'll be one of the ones to move on in the summer. But it might need that, David. I think that, see, when we talk about more in general, the squad and sometimes the habits that they pick up, it might take 3 or 4 of the potentially bigger ones to move on, for them to break that and become a different mentality. It might even be guys that we don't want to go. It might be some of the really big hitters when you think about Ryan Kent, Alfredo Morelos, Glenn Kamara. There's going to be guys like Phil Hollander and stuff that will move on as well. Kamar Roof, is he going to move on? These guys moving on, they're going to be losses, David, absolutely, but it creates opportunity to reinvent the kind of mentality
And
and
the culture.
lose that culture of the squad, absolutely. So there's pluses and negatives, and I agree with you completely. I think the coasting thing and sometimes the attitude of the squad, I'm not saying it's bad. Maybe it's just a wee bit more relaxed than we want it to be. Because I don't think you can say they've got a bad attitude when they can kick in and recover as much as they have. But it's just, why do we always need to recover, that we need to look at and kind of try and fix?
Absolutely. Well, folks, that will do us. Probably a deeper discussion than we had thought on Friday we'd be doing on this Monday show. Adam will be back with Heart and Hand Extra later in the week, looking ahead to the weekend's trip to Livingston. So I hope you all tune in for that. But of course, if you want to hear more from us on Heart and Hand, then up to 5 shows every single day on Patreon, patreon.com/Heart and Hand. We're also bringing out our latest scarf collaboration with The Famous. I know a lot of you like The Famous knitwear. We're bringing out a new scarf for them. It's a more subtle Ranger scarf, one that you could wear to the game and then into town after it. So I'll put the description, the link in the show description. Go and have a look at that. My thanks, as always, to our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, and to my guest, the wonderful Stevie Clifford.
David, thanks very much for having us on, and thanks very much for everybody for listening. It was a different kind of show. When we maybe set off on our journey yesterday, we never thought we'd be discussing the things that we have been today, but that's Rangers for you. It's never a dull moment.
That's exactly it. It's never, ever boring following Rangers. Right, folks, thanks for joining us. I'll talk to you again on here next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.